Hello and welcome back to the Nasty Metal Production channel here on YouTube, and welcome to another Friday review. And as you can tell from the records and the CD and of course the mask, today is a very special day. Since of course I know it is past its release date, but I am finally getting around to reviewing the 17th studio album from Iron Maiden. It is Senjutsu, which was released through both Parlophone and BMG on September the 3rd of this year. So without further ado, since obviously I can't be wearing this mask all fucking day, it's time for me to get in to my thoughts on the brand new studio album that following 2015's The Book of Souls, Senjutsu. So Senjutsu, which is loosely Japanese for tactics and strategy, which, to bring up, they've at least kept in the vaults since 2019. And who knows when they recorded in 2019. Apparently, we're looking on the Wikipedia. It's not quite stated. Actually, here it is. Yeah, no, it's not stated at what time or month or day that it was recorded in 2019. But the only thing that at least information online tells you is that it was recorded in at a studio in Paris, France. Follows the same idea as the previous album, The Book of Souls, basically cutting the album in half into at least 2 discs. Just to go into a track listing again, since this is actually it's shorter it's just at least 10 minutes shorter compared to The Book of Souls. This one, again, it's still pretty long in its own right, but again, if you were to tally up the 10 songs, it does at least clock up at least in an hour, 21 minutes and 53 seconds. But when the discs are basically spaced and are spread into 2 discs, the first disc containing 6 songs, the second disc containing 4 songs, each disc at least clocks in at least around, just a little bit around 40 minutes. Again, the first disc clocks in at 40 minutes and 15 seconds, whereas the second disc clocks in at 41 minutes and 38 seconds. So it's a lot more evenly here than compared to the Book of Souls. So I think that's at least a step in even more of a better direction in that regard, in my honest opinion. So just to run through at least the track listing for both these 2 discs, because I'm gonna at least a rundown through at least the discs here, because since I've got the 2 disc copy of the album. I didn't listen to this digitally, so I'm not going to be just running down all at once the 10 songs. I'm going to go by each disc, running down the track listing. So I'm doing that sort of concept here. So there we go. Let's get into it. So the first disc, it begins with the title track, then goes into Stratego, The Writing on the Wall, Lost in a Lost World, Days of Future Past, The Time Machine. And so that ends disc 1. So disc 2 begins with Darkest Hour, Death of the Celt, The Parchment, and Hell on Earth. So there's at least your track listing for both these 2 discs. Okay, now let's finally get into my absolute honest thoughts on the 17th studio album from Iron Maiden. Since, again, this does follow the same concept as the Book of Souls, I will definitely say this. At first, when I saw the track list and saw that they were continuing the same the sort of double album concept, and saw at least the track listing, especially with some of the songs, I was just, once again, a little bit underwhelmed. Because again, my comments originally towards the Book of Souls it was cold, basically. I was not a big fan of the Book of Souls, and largely that was due to the production and the mixing at the time. Again, still compared to the production and some of the previous albums that Iron Maiden had released, which was decently. I mean, they're using Kevin Shirley still for the album here for Senjutsu. But still, he wasn't a bad producer. It's just that somehow, and he did decent, though A Matter of Life and Death had some iffiness with its production job. Still, though, it had a nice warmth to it, and it sounded at least fine. Still not nearly as great as the production work with on like Brave New World and Dance of Death, especially any of the work with Martin Birch. Though it was still largely better than at least the production work on the two Blaze Bayley albums. So there's at least that there. But still, the production for the Book of Souls I thought was really lackluster. So it kind of also, it really ruined the experience for me. And also, I thought that once again, the inclusion of some of the longest songs on the album, I think also really kind of, it became the listens very laborious. And again, and I had a very laborious fucking listen towards at least the previous two albums prior to the Book of Souls, that being A Matter of Life and Death and the Final Frontier, which the Final Frontier was actually the first new album I actually had purchased at the time of, at least for an Iron Maiden album. Senjutsu here is the second newest album I actually had purchased, at least for a new album on its release year, actually, because I didn't do that with the Book of Souls. And I also, again, I do remember when A Matter of Life and Death was released. So my experiences basically with a lot of the albums past Brave New World were not a very enjoyable experiences. Not that I think a lot of the music sucked, even though actually, be quite honest, I just thought some of the albums were just very boring at times. It just didn't have a lot of oomph going on. And so I've somewhat grown to really appreciate the Book of Souls, even if I don't think the album is nearly that even enough. But again, re-listening to the Book of Souls just was at least not a very enjoyable listen. But over the years, I've at least come to somewhat appreciate, especially its first disc. So the Book of Souls I felt was a step in the right direction, especially now after revisiting it. It was a step in the right direction, but I felt like everything wasn't, the pieces just weren't there yet. Everything, even though it was starting to come through, but it felt like baby steps. So finally, when it came to Senjutsu, again, I was not very much looking, let's just say my expectations were very low for this album, especially when it's a double album again. Another double studio album. They're, again, continuing that concept like they began doing with the Book of Souls. So I wasn't a complete fan of that, okay? I wasn't at first. In July was, I think, the first day that they were giving you at least a taste of what you're going to expect from the new album, and what we got instead, for at least the first listen, which again, for the song Writing on the Wall, was very underwhelming at first. It was a little different to hear the more of, I wouldn't say outlaw country or whatnot. People were trying to say, well, it's very country-like. I'm not going to go that far. I think that is over-exaggerating, or the track here, or at least the riffing here, or at least the overall, the style of the track. I think that's a little bit far-fetched. All it is, it's a very standard, almost British blues, very southern riff in a way. Again, a lot of British blues artists, again, like Whitesnake, early Whitesnake, for example. Even AC/DC kind of played with riffs like this. Again, No Man's Land. And of course, Rose Tattoo with Rock and Roll Outlaw. Again, they played with riffs like these before, so it's nothing new really to at least the realms of basically the British hard rock stuff, or any of the hard rock stuff within the 1970s to 1980s, or just very bluesy style rock riffs before. But this one was a little different, and it just felt a little weird, though. And of course, to also mention, the fucking mixing for at least the video didn't even help the song at all, because, or especially my first impressions, because of it sucked. And it made me almost think like, don't tell me that the actual album is going to sound like this, but it does. It would sound worse than the Book of Souls. I was like, it can't sound this fucking reverby and echoey. It can't. It would be a goddamn disservice. And hell, Bruce Dickinson in the mix sounded like he was probably singing outside of a fucking house. Like he was singing outside the goddamn studio. Literally outside the damn building, while they were probably were performing and recording the damn track. It was bad. It was bad at all. It was fucking bad. And obviously, whoever mixed that, I think, should have got a big fucking ass chewing, like Jim Cornette probably did towards Hotchkiss Featherbottom for his goddamn reboot of the goddamn fucking collectible site, which crashed within fucking seconds or minutes. So I bet they probably gave him a goddamn ass tune to the person who obviously mixed the damn track for the video. So it was just all bad. So my first impressions was definitely not very lukewarm about it. However, when I'm starting to hear people's thoughts being like, oh, this is not how it sounds on Spotify. The version on Spotify sounds way better than here. This is an absolute fuck up obviously on the person who put the video together. Whoever mixed the track for the video. This is on that person. I actually had to find at least the official song upload, at least on YouTube. The one that's at least uploaded to the Iron Maiden /topic channel on YouTube, which is the official at least channel for at least a lot of the official upload songs for Iron Maiden. And from there, I was able to actually give the track another listen, and it didn't sound nearly as bad as this. Still, it wasn't as great as it probably here does on at least the actual CD itself. So it was still a lot of compression. Again, YouTube has a lot of compression issues. Their compression processor makes everything sound very bland and very mediocre and very anemic at times. So a lot of the uploads, even Iron Maiden posts, even when they are not very great sounding, it makes everything sound like absolute shit. So my first impressions, again, was kind of beginning to change. And so finally, when they released their second track, the second track off the album, the Stratego, okay, which is actually a Yannick Gers and Steve Harris number. Again, the writing on the wall, a lot of people trying to say that one was Yannick Gers all the way. I kind of suspect it was by all Steve Harris. However, I was totally wrong. It's actually a Adrian Smith and Bruce Dickinson pen track. And then when I rethink, okay, it actually does make sense. It actually made a lot more sense afterwards, given a lot of the stuff that Adrian Smith has worked on always had a very bluesy riff. So it made sense for the riffing for Writing on the Wall. It is definitely, that was totally an Adrian Smith riff. Not so much Yannick Gers. But this track right here, Stratego, the second one, was definitely a Yannick Gers and Steve Harris pen track. It's actually one of the more upbeat songs on the actual album. Actually, there's a few more, and I'll get to those. But it is definitely got that galloping Iron Maiden signature there. It is definitely one of the more straight up heavy rockers on the album. And it is, and again, the first listen, I was like, hey, this is not too bad. So again, it was definitely giving you the hopes that there might be something good coming from this album. So for the first two tastes of the album, it's interesting. It's different. So again, was it pumping me up for the album? Not really. It wasn't. And so when I had the album pre-ordered and when it was on the day that it was finally coming out, I finally got it in. I had to wait at least for at least almost a whole fucking day before I actually listened to it, because I wanted to wait for a specific time when it felt right to actually dive in, basically. I know I had a problem there. So when it came to finally opening up the cellophane, popping the disc in to my CD player, and then pushing play to then hearing the first notes of the title track, I will be honest with you, by the time it started really getting going, I was surprised how quick they were, like straight to the point they were to just getting into the actual track, compared to like the opening stuff for like the Final Frontier and the Book of Souls, where they had to have some really long, almost drawn out epic sort of intro before they really get into any of the sort of at least first riffs or so of at least the title track. Especially that with obviously the Final Frontier, they did that almost Hawkwind-like psychedelic almost intro, which was very with the sort of marching beats and whatnot, which was weird and odd, but it was different. They tried something again like that, though more very synth-like with If Eternity Shall Fall. Something like that. With Senjutsu, the title track here, starts off with a very Japanese. Again, it's almost to give you this sort of feel like you're going into obviously a war, into obviously beyond the Great Wall or something, or at least in Japan, like the war. You're almost expecting just samurais beginning to fucking, to draw their swords out and begin to start fighting. It's that sort of feel that they're going to give you. And when it does go into the actual track, which there's not really a solid drum beat, instead it's more tribal or marching like drum fills and whatnot going for this song, while a very heavy riff is playing along with this. And this is actually, the Senjutsu is a Adrian Smith and Steve Harris pen track. It's actually the only track where they collaborated on this entire album. And so already I'm getting the feel of this track, and I'm like surprised because I'm actually enjoying this. I can't believe I'm actually enjoying the first listens of a brand new Iron Maiden song, which I've not been familiar with at all. Again, it's the first tape, basically virgin listening. Because again, I put the disc on first and just push play, and already I'm immediately liking it. What the fuck's going on? So finally, after the song gets done, because this song clocks in at 8 minutes and 20 seconds. The eternity shall fall, or if eternity should fall, I think I said shall fall. It's if eternity should fall off the Book of Souls, clocks in at 8 minutes and 28 seconds. But the real sort of, at least any sort of real song for that album in terms of like riffs and just overall metal, basically, it's only, maybe 5 minutes at least? This track right here is just 8 minutes of just full on, just heavy metallic riffs with interesting drum fills, but it works. Everything just has a very marching like feel going on. But there's some great guitar solos. There are plenty of great guitar solos. And whatever slowness there happens I feel doesn't really take away anything of the song. For a 8-minute track, my experience flew by quick. I was surprised how much I'm actually enjoying these first 8 minutes, or just this whole entire 8 minutes of this track. So something felt good. Actually, something was. And I wasn't really able to actually at least realize that there was something good going on with me. And so by the time it finally gets into a Stratego, bam, it's like a 1-2 punch. You're going to, this one is definitely more upbeat compared to the title track, but still we're going, it's just flying by fast compared to anything of the previous 3 Iron Maiden albums. And then by the time that song's done, I'm now into, of course, Writing on the Wall. And somehow, I'm enjoying this song way more than it did the first time. It's grown on me. Everything. And then finally into the first real long song, at least the first real long song for the album. We'll get to the Steve Harris epics on when I finally come to my thoughts on disc 2. But Lost in the Lost World, which is, again, it's 9 minutes and 31 seconds, but... And this one right here, this is interesting because for the most part, the 3 songs here, they're very energetic in a way, I feel like. I know some have said how boring the title track is, but I don't find the song to be that boring. Again, it still had more energy compared to at least a lot of the stuff off at times, maybe The Final Frontier or The Book of Souls in a way, a lot of the more longer songs in a way. I felt like it actually still had a very nice pace going on to it. So going into Lost in the Lost World, this one does kind of begin. It's the first feel where you can tell that Steve Harris, this is the first actually Steve Harris pen track. So again, it's actually the shorter of at least 10 minutes shorter at times of the more epic ones compared to at least the other 3 on disc 2, but you get a lot of really 90s feel from this track. It really feels like something that could have almost been on, like, for example, the X Factor or Virtual 11 at times. It almost has that feel. You're starting to get that. But when the song does kind of kick in, it's actually, again, it flows by quick to me. I don't know what it is. Even the riff, though, it sounds very typical of something that would have came out from at least one of the, at least feels like it's been copied from at least a Blaze Bayley era track, but it's flowing by quickly to me. I guess in a way, I'm not finding anything as bad. I mean, my first listen though, I'll say this, I'll be honest, I didn't care for it at first, but with each repeated listens, because I gave this album, 8 listens? I gave it 8 listens, folks. And it just, I quickly really grew into this track to where it at least became more easier and easier for me to sit through, to where I began to enjoy it more. So it really made the experience a lot more quicker and more easier to sit through. And so I quickly grew into this track. Finally get into at least the second Adrian Smith, Bruce Dickinson pen track on the sound, that being Days of Future Past. This one is another upbeat song, just like with Stratego. It's another upbeat track, and this one also has some great fucking tasty leads and riffs going. It's actually shorter. It actually clocks in at 4 minutes and 3 seconds. But it's a short track, but it's got that short burst of at least still quality Maiden riffing, and it's still great. There's a lot of great stuff on this song. It's definitely another likable track, and one of my personal favorites off this album. It's a great track, and again, it's track number 5. The disc is nearly done. And finally, after that song is done, we're now into the Time Machine. And again, this is actually the second and final collaboration between Yannick Gers and Steve Harris. Because again, Stratego and the Time Machine are actually both penned by Yannick Gers and Steve Harris. And again, you definitely do feel a lot of his riffing here, but for the most part, the Time Machine feels different. This one's really interesting. This one, again, it's a 7 minute and 9 track, but with this track, everything it begins very slow in a way, very, again, as an epic, but when it does go into it, it's still very slow. But this is probably the best sort of almost proggy tracks off this one, because of it actually does really change up a lot of its riffing. At times there's some really interesting riffs going on, especially for leads. There's a lot of it. There's a really interesting lead part where it sounds like, I don't know what they're doing. Almost it seems like one of them might have been inspired by Tom Morello, almost, it seems like, and it's different. Not something I expected, but it actually kind of works with the track. It fits the theme, because again, it sounds like almost the sound of a time machine actually getting booted up and ready to at least basically just starting up, and it sounds like that, and that's what they're doing. What I don't know who's actually came up with the leader, whether it's Adrian Smith or Yannick Gers, but it just sounds again like a time machine just starting up and ready to at least take you back in a way, and that's what it does. And when it does go into it, it's like, again, you've already hit at least whatever destination you are heading to, and it's interesting, and it really makes the track even just as more enjoyable. And again, from just me enjoying the song, these 7 minutes flew by quick, and by then, disc 1 is done. And I'm just like, after disc 1 was done, I'm like, what the fuck just happened? And so finally, I'm now getting into at least disc 2, because instead, here by now, there should be at least almost a sense of dread. Almost, it's like, god damn, I gotta get to at least a second disc here. I gotta finish this album up. God damn it! But instead, it's more like, what the fuck? And I'm like, god damn it! I gotta get. It's like, holy shit! And so by the time I'm finally getting to disc 2, instead of feeling dread, it's more intrigue. It's like, what is going on here? So finally, for the first taste of at least disc 2, begins with Darkest Hour, which is actually a full-on, very power ballad on the album, but it's actually a great ballad. I would say it's probably more closer to some more really ballad-like stuff maybe you might get off of like Seventh Son of a Seventh Son, or even at times that actually more so like Seventh Son of a Seventh Son, or maybe Somewhere in Time-ish there. It's close. It's close. It's not quite Wasting Love off of Fear of the Dark, but it's definitely close to something more of a epic ballad that you probably would get off of like Seventh Son of Seventh Son. Also, to kind of go back, I forgot, there's a lot of synths on this album. there's a lot of synth feeling, which gives the album almost a very Seventh Son of a Seventh Son feel, and I'll get to more of that feel later in to at least my overall thoughts here for disc 2. And so, right from here, for the first taste of at least track 1 for disc 2, Darkest Hour, once again, it's flowing by quick. Nothing feels completely laborious. And again, I'm actually thoroughly enjoying Darkest Hour. I think for a ballad, it's a very well constructed. It's actually the final collaboration between Adrian Smith and Bruce Dickinson. And once again, anything that Adrian Smith does, he's usually pretty good with. Again, he did great with at least The Writing on the Wall and Days of Future Past, and finally here with Darkest Hour. So it's like they wrote a very interesting bluesy style track. They record a very, just a straight up energetic rocker, and here they write a ballad. And again, once again, it still has a nice pace going on, and it's very well constructed for a ballad that at least clocks in at 7 minutes and 20 seconds. This almost could easily be there at times. They're Beyond the Realms of Death kind of track for the album. It does have a very priest-like feel going on at times, but it still is very Iron Maiden, and it's their sort of take on a ballad like that, and I think it works great. Though it's interesting that it's a opener for at least disc 2, but it's different. But then brings up to the other sort of different aspect about the album, because of the first disc was straight up. It felt like the most straightforward album I think Iron Maiden actually had put out, whereas the second disc is a straight up Steve Harris epic here, because finally we're getting into the 3 Steve Harris epics: Death of the Celt, The Parchment, and Hell on Earth. And right from there, there might have been a little sense of dread there, but once again, since I'm enjoying a lot of at least these songs on this album, these 3 songs turn into me more like intriguing and very interesting. Like I don't know what to expect, so I'm kind of in for the ride here, instead of being like I'm dreading, just waiting for the ride to end. Instead, I'm almost in for it. Like I'm waiting to see where the ride is gonna take me. Where is the what is the next destination? I'm curious. It's like I'm basically just a drifter on a fucking train. Basically, I'm just there, who is just stuck on the train and just waiting for whatever next stop I'm going to. And that's where I am, where my mindset was with disc 2 here. And it's like I'm just the hitchhiker. So I'm just waiting to see where the next destination is. And obviously with Death of the Celt, the destination is really back to Virtual 11 from Iron Maiden, because this is definitely people say it's a copy of the Klansman. I take this more as like the Klansman Part 2. And I wasn't a big fan of the Klansman, I will say that. I know a lot of people like that track, but the thing is also, it's off of my least favorite Iron Maiden album. And that's also partially due to the fact that I think the production on that album sucks. It's very anemic. And whatever there was something, let's say anything good that was probably found on that album, production just wipes away. The production just sucked on there. It just sounded very anemic, and just sounded sterile and flat, and had no punch at all. At least here, there's actually some punch going on within the production here. That's another at least really key thing about me enjoying this album, is that the production is a step up from any of the previous sounds. It's a step up. Though Bruce Dickinson at times does sound like he's a little buried in some parts, but still, I can still make him out. In the Book of Souls, he's so up front, to where the guitars at times are buried at times, whereas here, everything's a lot more even in a way. Still, though, at times, a lot of the guitars are so even that at times it does drown out Bruce Dickinson's vocals, because again, obviously he's mixed a little at times low, but at times I can still make him out. So it's not that difficult to listen to. Still, it's a step up. And this one, it's a step up. So again, it is definitely a Klansman feel to this song, but at the same time, I've actually was able to get through this song. It's a very easy sit through. So nothing, again, I'm trying to find something bad here and something that I at least dislike, but I can't. Not yet. So after that, after the Death of the Celts is done, which again, it's a very still, it has a decent pace, even for a track that's at 10 minutes and 20 seconds, though those 10 minutes fucking go by so quickly. So everything is still, I'm still somewhat thoroughly enjoying this. So finally, we're getting into, of course, the absolute longest song on the entire album, that being The Parchment, because this one clocks in at 12 minutes and 39 seconds. And again, we're still keeping that sort of Blaze Bayley era feel at times. So this one, the riff, when it actually does go into the actual riff, because again, with these three songs, just like with any Steve Harris epic, he's got to have a very drawn out 2-minute calm part. Basically everything's got to be almost epic in a way, a very 2 minutes of just bass and acoustic stuff before you really get into any sort of electric guitars and riffs and drums and just anything that might sound like an actual metal track. He always has to do that, and he's been doing that since, in a way, since No Prayer for the Dying. He's been doing that, but here it's really more apparent than ever. However, when it does go into it, this one does have a very riff that's very similar to Fear is the Key from Fear of the Dark. It's got a very slow, almost a very Richie Blackmore style riff going on here with this track. Very almost Dio era Rainbow feel going on with the riffing of this track. But the thing is, it doesn't stay this riff, because it has a way, it changes pacing through at least the track here, and finally towards the end, it just, everything builds up to a very epic galloping track with a lot of great guitar. So once again, there's great guitar solos throughout these entire songs, which really makes the experience a lot more enjoyable and more entertaining. Because again, there's a lot of great twists and turns going around with these songs, which again, it was kind of close to that with the Book of Souls, but still it felt like baby steps. So everything, of course, the deletion of a lot of the whoas fucking stuff that Bruce Dickinson was adding into a lot of the songs really have disappeared on here, which is another great experience. So those have disappeared. But that was only for at least, 2 songs, and he did those a little bit overdid on those songs on the Book of Souls. Everything's fine. I mean, he harmonizes his vocals, but at least they're harmonizing along with at least the riffs and the leads and whatnot. He's actually moving along with the pacing of the song instead of just like lazily stopping and adding in an extra fucking thing that probably didn't need to be there. So everything sounds a lot more creative in a way. Everything sounds a little different, and it's great. And again, the Parchment, for a 12-minute 39 track, it flew by fucking quick. Finally, I'm into Hell on Earth. This is interesting because of most part, there's at least a Blaze Bayley era feel, at least a 90s era, because most of this album has a very 90s feel going on. I can make some comparisons to like Fear of the Dark. I make some comparisons at times maybe to a bit of No Prayer for the Dying. And of course, you'll get a lot of the post, Bruce Dickinson era albums, everything that began with like Brave New World and into, Book of Souls. You get a little bit of that throughout at least the feel of the album. But also, you get a lot of interesting callbacks to, again, like Somewhere in Time and 777, at times maybe Power Slaver, Peace of Mind. You'll get those at least interesting sort of callbacks and feels. Whereas with Hell on Earth, finally up to here, this one feels like a combination between the lengths of almost a Blaze Bayley era track, but with something off a Seventh Son of Seventh Son, because this track, you really can get the sort of almost synth feel of like Seventh Son of Seventh Son, and for some reason, it is fucking memorable and almost catchy with these 2 minutes. It's actually one of the actually great 2 minutes, at least, before intro, before at least the actual song, because I'm actually enjoying this and I'm liking this. When it does kick in, my God, is this for a epic 11-minute and 19 track? This is just straight up a galloping Iron Maiden. But even it doesn't stay in the same pace for the most part. And there's a lot of great riffs, a lot of manicness going on. This is, again, talk about a final epic track. I mean, they could have made this album a one whole album. I could have picked the best 7 or 8 songs, and Hell on Earth could have been a great 7th or 8th track, because this right here is perfect. This is, again, what a way to finally take hold, or just the overall idea, and grabbing it by the jugular of the whole basically concept of a very long epic track. And I think Steve Harris finally found the best formula of what he should do with one, and that's make it as entertaining or as enjoyable as possible, because this right here is a great final epic track. Since my experiences with a lot of the Iron Maiden albums since A Matter of Life and Death, it just was, a lot of them was not very easy to get through, but Senjutsu is the first real Iron Maiden album where I felt like, I think everything just came together. The pieces were finally there, and I was finally enjoying a brand new Iron Maiden album for the first time. Again, maybe a lot of the underwhelming aspect of me maybe played a part in me actually enjoying it, but at the same time, when going back and listening to the Book of Souls and then listening to this one, my God, did this album zip by way quicker. Which is again, I listened to this album 8 fucking times. I've given it 8 listens. 2 listens on the first day I got it, 2 more listens the next day, 2 more listens the third day, and then finally 2 more listens the final fucking day. So 2 listens across 4 days, and each day I warmed up to this album way more, and I became more familiar with this album than I ever did with any of the previous Iron Maiden albums. None of that. The experiences for the previous ones were all very hard to get through, but this was the first time where each disc was actually very easy to sit through. Even when these 3 songs on disc 2 are long, it didn't feel like I was I was listening to the album for like at least 40 minutes. I didn't really at times feel like that, and especially when I got through both discs. I didn't even realize that I was listening to an album that at least was 1 hour and fucking 23 minutes. To me, it's the Blade Runner 2049 effect. Because when that movie came out and when I went to the theater, the fact that I was in that theater for fucking 3 hours, or at least 2 or 3 hours, it felt like I was in there for an hour, because I enjoyed that movie, and it just made the overall experience a lot easier. And so by the time it was done, I'm like, was I really in there for fucking 3 hours? I guess I was, but it felt like 1 hour. That's the way I feel towards Senjutsu. To me, the album right here, it felt like I was listening to an album that was 50 minutes instead of an album that was an hour and 23 minutes. At least over 23 minutes. I'm like, what the shit? So again, after I listened to it, I was like, did I just enjoy this album? And to tell the truth, yes. I enjoyed Senjutsu way more than any of the albums since Brave New World. So, which then finally will then come to my conclusion. So that's when I'll finally head into there. So let's go to my final verdict.
So there it is, folks. There's obviously my honest thoughts on Senjutsu, the 17th album from Iron Maiden. And so, to give you a rating, yes, I'm gonna go there. I'm giving it a 9.3 out of 10. I couldn't believe it. After giving it as many listens that I have did, which is surprisingly, because of, again, if you didn't hear my thoughts or didn't really make out what I was at least didn't feel what my thoughts were, yes, it is a first. For a brand new Iron Maiden album, I really felt this might be some of the best they've at least put out since in my honest opinion, since like Brave New World, or even at times maybe Dance of Death. This just really felt like a very solid, more consistent album from them, in my opinion. But again, not everybody's going to share those same thoughts or opinions. So if you have any sort of thoughts, whether it be at least positive or negative, you can leave them in the comments section below. But if you're still kind of curious about this album, I'm not going to tell you whether you really should listen to this album, but at least give it a shot and a chance and see if it does anything for you. If not, that isn't entirely at least for you. It is your honest reaction. But if it does something for you, again, I'm glad. There we go. That's it. There's my review for the 17th studio album from Iron Maiden, Senjutsu. So with that, hope all of you enjoyed. This is Thrasher saying I'm out. And I'll see you all later. Take care, everyone. Now it's time to take off this goddamn hot mask. Jesus Christ.